Ferrari started the weekend of the 2025 Formula One British Grand Prix at the Silverstone Circuit in a very promising way, positioning itself at the top of the timesheets and engaging in a competitive battle with McLaren. Formula One has a tendency to defy expectations, and yesterday was a perfect example of that unpredictability. The new aerodynamic upgrades introduced on the floor of the Ferrari SF-25 single-seater appeared to have a more significant and positive impact at Silverstone compared to the previous Grand Prix held at the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg, Austria. The Ferrari SF-25 demonstrated good competitiveness both in terms of one-lap qualifying pace and long-run performance consistency over a race stint. However, the Italian team from Maranello continues to deal with a recurring issue. The car suffers from understeer, particularly in the more technical and twisty sections of the British track layout. During the race simulations in the second free practice session, seven-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton experienced excessive tire degradation in comparison to his Ferrari teammate Charles Leclerc, who instead managed to complete a longer stint while maintaining a cleaner and more stable pace. Reigning world champion Max Verstappen unexpectedly recorded the fastest average race pace during the long-run simulations in free practice 2. His average lap time was 1/10 of a second quicker than that of Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc. Both Ferrari drivers began their high-fuel simulation runs with laps that were perhaps overly aggressive, registering times around the 1:30.5 mark. This initial push immediately stressed the tires, accelerating the degradation process. The same approach particularly affected Lewis Hamilton, who suffered a considerable drop in performance starting from the third lap of his run. On average, the pace of Lewis Hamilton was approximately 0.5 of a second slower than that of Max Verstappen. This forced the British driver to return to the pits earlier than planned. After completing a pit stop, Lewis Hamilton fitted a set of soft compound tires and managed to complete 4 additional laps, posting an average lap time of 1:32.2. He began this second stint with a conservative approach, opening with a lap of 1:32.9 before progressively improving to 1:31.8 on his final lap. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc was able to control the performance drop of his tire compounds more effectively. The Ferrari driver avoided major degradation and successfully prevented the development of graining, which can significantly compromise traction and cornering performance over long stints. It is also important to mention a key detail in Max Verstappen's run. Despite the fact that the timing data crowned him as the fastest driver with a heavy fuel load, the Dutchman strategically took a lap midway through his stint to allow the tires to cool down. This tire management decision played a vital role in preserving the performance level of his Pirelli compounds and is not a trivial advantage. In the final part of his simulation, the RB21 single-seater from Red Bull Racing, based in Milton Keynes, began to show signs of front-end limitation, likely originating from the front axle, possibly due to either mechanical setup choices or thermal stress. On the other hand, Charles Leclerc was able to control graining during final laps of the stint. In terms of tire wear and degradation, the data clearly shows how Lewis Hamilton suffered from an immediate drop-off in performance, losing around 0.8 of a second per lap. Speaking over team radio, the Ferrari driver reported braking instability, attributing the problem to the tire compounds no longer operating within their optimal thermal range. This degradation issue also limited Lewis Hamilton in corner exit phases, where he had to exercise greater control to manage a car that had become increasingly oversteering. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, also backed off slightly after an aggressive first lap. The driver from Monte Carlo then managed the tire drop-off from laps 3 to 5, working to clean up and eliminate the early signs of graining that had started to appear on the tire surface. By adopting a more conservative driving style over these 3 laps, Charles Leclerc was able to stabilize his pace and maintain consistent lap times in the second part of the run. However, his times remained slightly slower than those recorded by Max Verstappen and by both McLaren racing drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Still, when evaluating average lap times, the McLaren drivers, despite their consistency and ability to maintain competitive pace, were slightly slower than Charles Leclerc. Both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri showed impressive pace consistency during their simulations. This indicates that the McLaren MCL39 has superior capabilities when it comes to maintaining the Pirelli tires within a stable temperature window, an element that will be particularly advantageous over the full 300-kilometer Grand Prix distance. The Mercedes drivers were instead slower overall, trailing nearly 1 full second per lap behind Max Verstappen. The primary limitation for Mercedes was again tire temperature control. The exceptionally warm track surface contributed to a rapid thermal buildup in the tires, which caused early graining. Data charts reveal that both Kimi Antonelli and George Russell began to suffer from tire graining after just 3 laps of simulation, caused by thermal shock. Fortunately for the Brackley-based team, the situation improved in the following laps, during which the tires had time to recover and the drivers were able to lower their lap times once more. In his typical pre-weekend remarks to the media, Charles Leclerc appeared reasonably optimistic. The Monegasque driver acknowledged that the performance gap to Red Bull Racing still existed and was quite evident, but he expressed a strong desire to attempt a victory on Red Bull's home soil at Silverstone. After free practice 2 came to a close, Charles Leclerc delivered additional feedback via team radio during his in-lap at the wheel of the Ferrari SF-25, stating, "I think we have to maximize qualifying, but the race setup feels really good." This quick analysis from the driver serves as a reminder of the observations made just 1 week ago at the Austrian Grand Prix. As expected, the Ferrari engineers and technicians dedicated the entirety of the 3rd free practice session to optimizing the car's setup for the qualifying session. This seems to be the essential goal in order to realistically challenge McLaren Racing and go head-to-head with their distinctive papaya-colored Formula One machines. And Ferrari is starting to believe it can aim high this weekend, as Charles Leclerc improved the 2024 pole position time by 0.3 of a second during the 3rd free practice session for the British Grand Prix. 4 drivers finished within just 108 thousandths of a second, representing 3 different top teams: Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull. The Monegasque driver appears to have found a solid balance with the Ferrari SF-25, even in the face of a drastic drop in temperatures, 20 degrees in the air and just 25 on track. The Monegasque driver clocked a time of 1.25.498 on a set of soft tires, narrowly edging out the heavily favored McLaren of Oscar Piastri by just 68 thousandths of a second. Lewis Hamilton was only 11th, but the home crowd favorite was forced to abort his flying lap when a red flag was shown due to an aerodynamic component from Ollie Behrman's Haas that had remained on the racing line at turn 15. The British driver had been in the fight for the top spot and appears satisfied with the work done so far. At Ferrari, confidence is beginning to grow. The Italian team believes it could be on the verge of a strong weekend, as the updated SF-25 featuring the new floor design seems to adapt well to a wide range of track conditions. Additionally, the insights gathered from Lewis Hamilton's long run, where he stressed the tires early and completed a full medium tire simulation, provided the Ferrari engineers with critical data regarding how far the SF-25 car can be pushed in terms of performance without exceeding the tire limits. Challenging McLaren will undoubtedly be a difficult task, as the British team is extremely well prepared from a technical standpoint. However, this does not change the fact that Scuderia Ferrari is not afraid and is determined to aim for the very top of the starting grid in Sunday's Grand Prix.